case of Arsenal, they're focusing on the number 9 as a priority, and yes, the left-sided attacker has been very important for a long time and will continue to be, and that's something that they are doing a lot of work on, I'm sure, behind the scenes. But let's see how it turns out with the 9. I'm not saying it will chronologically happen by that, but in that way. But the 9 is their top priority. Similarly with Chelsea, they were sorting the striker. They got Liam Delap in. They are still looking for another versatile attacker and that wide player. But they do have time on their hands now, the market being fully open since Monday and doesn't close until September the 1st. So, of course, there's tons of activity taking place behind the scenes, but and clubs want to get things settled sooner rather than later. Players want to know their future sooner rather than later, but it doesn't always happen as quickly as they would hope. You know, we have talked in great depth about the likes of Rodrygo, who has admirers inside the Emirates Stadium, of Anthony Gordon, who has admirers inside the Emirates Stadium, and Sane was a player that they looked at for the wide positions before he committed to Galatasaray. There'll be others too, and we've seen the names floating around. It is quite interesting, given that both of those clubs and others, I must say, in the Premier League have looked so closely at Williams and for so long that it appears something that they're not going to be taking forward. But, with some of these players, and I say it with total respect to a player I love what I've seen from, we build it up in the public and the media and in fan bases to be something that everybody clamours for, but it might not be the right option for those clubs, and they might find that elsewhere. So I don't sense any kind of panic, Chelsea and Arsenal, around these situations. And
another important saga of the summer, the one of Benjamin Sesko. I'm receiving many questions in the last hours because there are reports from Germany saying that Benjamin Sesko and Arsenal have reached an agreement on personal terms. My understanding, guys, is at the moment, this afternoon, then we will see later, this afternoon there is still no complete agreement between all parties involved in this story. Benjamin Sesko, his agent, Arsenal, Red Bull Leipzig, there is still nothing done in terms of transfer fee, in terms of personal terms. Talking, yes. Discussing, yes. Trying to reach agreements, but not something done as of now. So remember that Sesko contacts are ongoing. Victor Gyokeres remains an option for Arsenal, especially if the price will be the one expected when they made this pact, Gyokeres agents and Sporting, for Victor Gyokeres. So let's see what kind of final pricing there will be for the striker, but for sure what I can confirm to you is that at the moment for Sesko there is still nothing done. Then conversations will continue. Let's see what happens with Sesko. Let's see what happens with Gyokeres. But as of today, I'm not able to confirm an agreement Sesko-Arsenal yet. So let's see and follow what happens with the situation in the next days. Let's see what
reported in Bild today that he has agreed personal terms to join Arsenal. What do you make of that? Is it finally getting over the line? Because, it's dominated so many transfer windows now.
Yeah, we know that Benjamin Sesko a year ago wanted to join Arsenal. There were 3 Premier League clubs, Arsenal, Chelsea and Manchester United. And Sesko picked Arsenal, but then had to make a secondary decision. Was he going to move in 2024 or wait a year? And he decided it was better for his development to stay at Leipzig. Arsenal then went back to Leipzig in January to see whether anything mid-season was possible. And the answer was no. And now it's no surprise that Arsenal are revisiting this transfer, but Victor Gyokeres is there as well. It's been described to me that unlike Edu, who was meticulous and took a single target and tried very hard to diligently and discreetly get it over the line, but with new sporting director Andrea Berta, he likes to lay his clothes out before the party, try on each outfit, and then decide what he's going to walk out wearing. And this is why we're seeing both Victor Gyokeres and Benjamin Sesko advancing. And it's very helpful sometimes in a transfer to agree terms with the player, or alternatively a fee, and then go back to your other target and do the same, because you can leverage them against each other. And that kind of maverick approach is how...
Got it in for the Arsenal. Look, I do, you've got to play the best team sometime, but the first 6 games, that's harsh.
Yeah, it is to play three of last season's top five, and obviously we're one of those top five as well. Makes it very, very difficult for sure. But I think it was interesting what you guys were just saying there about the need to kind of get that centre forward in. What it could do is give Arsenal the kick up the backside that they need to get going in this transfer window, because they can't afford to go into the start of the season not quite right. Now, I know the first few games are always a little bit up and down in terms of fitness and people trying to get on track, but for Arsenal, who it feels like are maybe dragging their heels a little bit at the moment in the transfer window, actually this is probably a bit of a wake-up call that says we have to be ready. We have to get the majority of our business done ahead of pre-season starting in about 3.5 weeks time.
Yeah, I think you're right, Harry. And by the way, I also said yesterday, Dino and Harry, that you look at PSG going on to win the final that they did. Arsenal were close to beating PSG, apart from the goalkeeper, who was outstanding both legs. So Arsenal are not missing a lot, Harry. Do you know what I mean?
No, and when Liverpool won the league, as they won the league, they only lost 2 games. So it's not as if they could do a lot about it. Even if you had a striker, would you have overcome Liverpool?
Yeah.
When they've only lost 2. But, so their options, right? I'm looking at their options, Arsenal, with the strikers. They got Gyokeres, they got Sesko, Isak, Nunez. There's a few options out there. Depends where you want to go shopping. If you want to go to Marks and Spencer's, Isak.
And you might have to pay a bit more, but it could be worth it, Harry.
Yeah, I mean, everybody, I think, agrees that Alexander Isak would be a game-changing signing for Arsenal and would probably see them get over the line. But I just don't think that's possible this summer. I don't think Newcastle have got any appetite to sell the player. And if they do, it's going to be at a price point that I just don't think Arsenal would get anywhere near. So I don't think that one's a likely outcome. But I think Sesko and Gyokeres are probably the two that are being spoken about the most at the moment. Sesko is someone that Arsenal have been watching since last summer. We know that. We know that they tried for him last summer. We know that they inquired about the possibility of signing him in January as well. And Arsenal didn't do that in the end because RB Leipzig were not interested in allowing the player to leave at that point. But the problem with something like that is when a pursuit goes on for such a long time, when that interest continues, you get to a point where there's now a pressure to execute that deal. And 19 days into June, I'm not saying that you expect all your business to be done at this stage. It is still relatively early. But I think Arsenal fans were able to kind of stomach the lack of business in January and maybe an underwhelming summer last time around, if we're being honest, because they thought that it meant that going into this summer, everything will be prepared, Arsenal will be ready to go, and there wouldn't be any messing around. But at the moment, it doesn't sound like there's an agreement with Benjamin Sesko on a personal level, and it doesn't sound like Arsenal are anywhere near RB Leipzig's valuation. So, that's based on what we're reading and what we're hearing at the moment, but it's causing a bit of anxiety, I'd say, within the Arsenal fan base at the moment. And then you've got Victor Gyokeres as well, who would also go for a pretty big fee, I'd imagine north of £60 million. Great goal record in Portugal, but how is that going to translate into Premier League football? That's the question. Someone put it to me brilliantly the other day. He said, what's the exchange rate? What do those 39 goals in the Portuguese top flight translate to in the Premier League? And there's always that risk, isn't there, when you bring a player in from another league? So, I mean, I'd be happy with either of them, to be honest. I think they're both good options, but I think there is just a little bit of frustration creeping in among the Arsenal fan base because it feels like we're no closer really to identifying the main bulk of our business, and that's a worry. Thomas Partey could leave as well, guys, which means that Arsenal are going to need to go out, in my opinion, and bring in another midfield player as well. So there's a lot to do for Mikel Arteta and Arsenal.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we're at the critical stage yet, but pre-season's 3 weeks away.
Yeah, amazing, isn't it?
I remember John Toshak saying to me years and years ago, right? He said, you can be the best coach in the world, you can be the best motivator in the world, you can be the best tactically in the world, but you've got to pay for a goal. So in other words, what do you value a 20 goal a season striker? The first figure comes into my head is 100 million. That's Harry Kane.
Yeah.
So for 60 million,